Welcome to Muffin Talk.
Kia ora and welcome to Muffin Talk. This program is brought to you by the initiative Titipounamu, Study and Joy. I'm pleased to welcome today Ros Rice. Ros is the CEO of Community Networks Aotearoa and has worked in the nonprofit sector for 37 years. She also used to be a station manager, and she is at the moment with her job at the Community Networks Aotearoa. She has also done interviews about the big topic at the moment, which is the re-registration at Companies Office. And Ros, we're getting right into it. Can you tell us a little bit more about the background and what is that, the re-registration for the charities?
Sure. Well, back in 2022, the government decided to review and change the incorporated societies legislation. And because they've changed the legislation for incorporated societies, the next thing was the expectation that incorporated societies would change their constitutions to bring them up to date with the legislation. And then following changing their constitutions and bringing them up to date with the legislation, they then have to re-register again, because most of them have registered once already, at the company's office. So that's the basic of it. It was 4 years ago that this legislation changed. And the government has basically given incorporated societies 4 years to sort their stuff out and make sure that they're abiding by the law.
What happened in these 4 years?
That's a really good question, because we're still asking what happened. To be honest, they didn't really start focusing on the incorporated societies changing their legislation until 2023. So let's say that's 3 years. And in 2023, they really didn't get into it till October 2023. And as you might know, if you're in the community and voluntary sector, in October, you've got all sorts of things going on. You've often got AGMs coming up, Christmas is on the horizon, all that sort of thing. End of year is starting to loom. And I suspect a lot of incorporated societies thought we've got plenty of time, so we'll do it in the new year. 2024, some did it, but a lot didn't. And when we realized that a lot of organizations actually weren't meeting their obligations to the law, we started advertising it. We being organizations like my own, lawyers, accountants, different people who work with the sector, started saying, you need to do this. You've got to change your constitution. And I think what a lot of people don't realize is that it's not just something you go and sit in a room and change your constitution. You're actually held by your previous constitution, the one you've got to change. And it tells you how long you must take, or like how much notice you must give your members to change your constitution.
An AGM or something to confirm your constitution, isn't it?
Yes, but you still have to give them a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
You have to send your constitution out to your members, and you have to show them what the old constitution is, tell them what the changes are that you've made, and then you have to hold either an AGM or a special general meeting to get approval from your membership to make those changes. So that can take a month or so. That involves work. And it also involves people actually understanding what they're supposed to be doing. It also involves people understanding what the legislation was requiring of them. So it's not easy especially if you're a very small NGO and your focus is on your client's work. I'll give you a good example here. If you're an amateur sports group, the reason why you joined your amateur sports group is probably not so that you could sit on their board and change their constitution according to legislation and know how to re-register at the company's office. You've probably joined that small amateur sports group so you can play rugby or watch your kid play soccer. And so there is only a few people, and that would be the people on the governance board, who would have any idea what they're supposed to do. And there's no guarantees that they would know, because it's not the sort of thing that we get asked in the sector to do very often, which is upgrade our constitutions to new legislation. So it's not easy for people to actually do this thing. And there was a recognition that we needed to sort of teach people how to do it, especially because there's an awful lot of incorporated societies out there.
So when you say we, can you just clarify?
Who we as groups like ours, which have we're a national, what's called a national umbrella organization, and we have a lot of members who
Mhm.
have a lot of members by the very virtue of them being a network,
Yeah.
because our members are all networks. That means they network out to other NGOs and non-profit organizations in their region. Also, lawyers. There are quite a few now lawyers around the country. We know most of them who specialize a lot in helping out with non-profit organizations. So the lawyers started holding Zooms. There's one lawyer, his name's Stephen Moe, and he comes from a legal firm in Christchurch, and he often holds Zooms to talk about legal issues to do with our sector. And he gets over 300 people on his Zooms.
Yes,
They're
I
huge.
interviewed him a couple of years ago when it was all fresh.
Yeah.
But so you supported the community sector with this information and
Yes.
with reminding them that they have to look into, is their constitution, does it comply with the new law?
New regulations. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then not only were there Zooms held, and we held them ourselves with other people that were important, lawyers from Wellington, because we're based in Wellington. We also wrote a lot in our newsletter about it. We sent out things we call community alerts. Community alerts are, this is urgent, you need to know now, sort of feel to them. But there still wasn't a huge uptake. And we then thought, well, we need to do more to help them. And we started thinking, what happens if they don't do this? Because if there are serious consequences to organizations not registering, it could be, have quite a serious effect on them.
Was that clear from the beginning? Because did the people know how serious the issue is that if they don't
I
register?
don't believe so, not from the very beginning. They
Okay.
knew they were supposed to do it, but they didn't have a, if you don't do it, this will happen. But
So what are the scenarios, a typical scenario that, like you said, a rugby club or something like that?
right, let's take a small amateur sports club like a friendly rugby club. And the first thing that could happen to them, well, if you don't register by the 5th of April, and this is according to legislation, you will be dropped off the company's office website. Now, I need to, just before I go into details about that, just explain something for people who don't get it. When you form an organization, if you want to access funding, you need to actually form a legal entity. And there are several forms of legal entity that you can set your organization up as. One's an incorporated society, who are the ones that we're talking about now. You could have a trust. Some can have what's called an incorporated company and other forms of legal entity. There's not a lot of them, maybe 4 or 5. Now, if as a legal entity you want to then apply to the government to get tax-free status, which is called becoming a charitable entity, you then apply to charity services, but you don't lose your legal entity basic legal entity. So if you apply to charity services and become a charity, you would be a charitable incorporated society or a charitable trust, all those sort of things.
Mhm.
The term charity is like a blanket thrown over the top of your legal entity, but it doesn't change the legal entity.
Mhm.
So we have people who get a lot confused. And we were dealing with some people in our office just the last couple of days who said, but we're charitable, so we don't have to do it. But they're still an incorporated society. They do have to do it, but they haven't done it. And unfortunately, they're running out of time. Now, when I talk about you getting dropped off the company's office, you will, first off, no longer exist as a legal entity. If you don't exist as a legal entity, you then have no control over your bank account. So the first major thing is that if you don't do this and truly time is running out or has run out virtually, if you haven't done it and you get dropped off the company's office, you will no longer be able to access any of your money that you have in the bank. The reason why you can't access it is that you are no longer the entity that opened up that bank account. You can't get into your bank account. Now, this is quite serious because if you want to take it to go to court or do something about you suddenly not getting access to your bank account and the bank's refusing to serve you your money or give you your money, you're not going to be able to get your money to take a case against them.
That means
Uh,
that pretty much all the members of that entity should have a real interest in making sure that the organization complies with the legislation, right? Happens with the money.
well, it's even more than that. What if you're a group that have a coordinator or a small paid part-time staff? You no longer can pay their bills. You can't pay your staff's pay. You have no access to the money in your bank account.
What happens to
That's
the contract of the contract? For example, if you have a coordinator, if the entity doesn't exist, the person doesn't have a job anymore.
contracts that you have are no longer legal.
Mm.
Physical assets that you might have. So if you're a rugby club, you might have club rooms. You don't own them anymore. They're owned by an entity that no longer exists. So you no longer have any ownership of any physical assets.
Mhm.
You've got a bit of ground. It no longer belongs to you because you are not any longer an existing entity and they can't belong to no one. Now, the question is like, what happens to these things? And I believe the Crown is going to, I have heard that the Crown will take the money and that the land, is it land, um, LINS, I think it's called. It deals with the assets like land and buildings, but it's yet to be confirmed. But you don't own it anymore. That is for sure. Also, uh,
Do you think that there's any way that if it happens to an organization, is there any way that to retrieve it, or is that all in the cloud at the moment? I don't know it.
can I talk to that in a moment?
Yep.
Can I just say that also, if you are a charity, you will lose your charity status.
Or because you don't exist.
That's right. And if you lose your charity status, you will also lose your tax-free status.
Oh my God. So
If
that
you lose your tax-free status, you may start getting bills from inland revenue.
but that also means that if you are currently receipting your donors, then you have to do that. If you don't want to continue, you have to do it before the 4th of April or 5th of
5th of
April,
April.
because afterwards you can't issue donation receipts anymore.
I think that if you're not going to do it in time, you have an ethical responsibility not to take money from anybody.
I'm referring to the money that they've already received for the tax for the year 25, 26.
Well, I can't speak to that, not being a lawyer, but I can foresee difficulties with that because how can you show how much money you've used of their money and how much you haven't? how much is sitting in your bank account, how much isn't.
Yeah.
I think that the bigger issue would be, what if you'd just done a funding application and a philanthropic organization had put money into your bank account for you to use for a project?
You have to return it.
Can't, and you can't use it for that project, you can't even use the money, and you can't return it.
Oh, you can't return it either.
No.
Yeah.
So ethically, I would not worry so much about your membership fees unless they're huge. And in some organizations, they'll be very big, but most organizations, they're probably quite a small amount. But I don't see how you can prove what you've used of that and what you
And the
haven't.
5th of A April, that's in the middle of Easter. It's
Yep, it's actually probably, I think it's because one of the things you have to do is give your membership notice before you change your constitution. I think most groups who haven't done it by now are too late because they haven't got enough time to give notice, hold a special a special or an AGM.
mm,
And I got a notice just the other day from a friend. It was a list of charities, not all of the incorporated societies, but those that have charity status that haven't done it. And it's 700, but we believe it's around 700. We believe that there is around about 9,000 incorporated societies who have not done this work. People are going to start trying to access their money, or, I don't know what the government's got planned to deal with things like people who can no longer use their buildings. I don't know how they're going to deal with all that, and there's the issue of things like if you use one of your buildings and you've got a contract to get electricity to that building, that contract is no longer legal. So what
mm.
if you go into that building and use the electricity? You're virtually stealing it. It's kind of serious, to say the least. Now, what I do need to say is there's been quite a push to try and get government to extend the deadline, but the latest we've heard is that they won't, because these dates that they've given have been enshrined in the legislation.
Mm.
And the only way they can change that is by changing the legislation, and they're not going to do that.
That's quite complicated. Yeah.
Mm. So you were asking about what can you do if this happens to you? And I've got to say, there is a little confusion at the moment. I got legal advice that there is a clause in the Incorporated Societies Act saying that organizations could write and ask for a restoration of their organization. But the legal advice at that time was that only about a third of the organizations who haven't done it yet will meet the criteria, which is quite narrow, to be able to get their organizations restored. However, there seems to have been a change in government information, and we haven't officially been told it, but there is now on the Companies Office website information about restoration of an organisation, and they don't mention the criteria. So they
Mm.
say if you don't do this in time, you can apply to us for restoration. Now, what I'd say is it's worth a try, but I don't think you will get restored overnight. It's going to take some time. So there may be organizations who get restored down the line, but how urgently the Companies Office is able to deal with multiple restoration requests, I'm unsure.
So if an organization decides, well, we'll just close down, then because they say, oh, we are just dragging on, we just close
Right.
down. And then if they have any assets, they can give away the assets according to their constitution, right? So they could, it usually be
Only
similar.
if they are able to do the close down before the 5th of April. Because if they don't close down before the 5th of April, then they will be dropped off the register. It'll be taken out of their hands, and they won't have any assets left that they can pass on.
Correct. So they have until 5th of April, so 3 weeks' time. And this is
Yes.
the time that they can give the assets to other organizations who
Well,
are,
they can only give their assets if they do the proper wind down
yeah,
procedure. And winding down isn't as easy as just going, okay, we're going to close tonight, and Karen, you can have this much, and you can have this, and you can have this. They can't do it that way. They've got to do it according to
the
legal
Constitution.
requirements.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's not as easy to do. So if anyone wants to just close down, they should start tomorrow, and they should work out their timelines to make sure that they don't get trapped by the 5th of April deadline, because they
Mm.
really, really left it late. So that's kind of important.
Yeah.
But I think, well, one of the things that we're doing is that we hold a thing called Sharp Strategies. It's a Zoom conversation. We usually have experts in on our Sharp Strategies, and we've got two experts at the moment. One is a person who we respect greatly. She's from the BNZ. And I can just say at the moment that the BNZ has been one of the most proactive banks on this issue. Don't ask me why the others haven't, but the BNZ have. They've set up a team of people who are going through all the BNZ clients who are incorporated societies and contacting them directly, saying to them, we don't want to be in the position of having to refuse you access to your account. This is what you need to do. But they are also coming across people who just aren't interested in doing it. They want to keep going like a club. They just don't want to meet the legal requirements. It's almost in the too hard basket for them. And we also have been helping a lot of people who are like that. But what the BNZ have done is they've actually frozen incorporated societies accounts before the 5th of April, because they want to shock people into understanding. They'll go, why is our account frozen? They'll go, you haven't reincorporated. If you want your account to be unfrozen, you have to do that. So they're virtually having to put this kind of hassle onto people simply to get people to do the right
Has that
thing.
helped?
I don't know. I haven't talked to them yet, but
Yeah.
the one of the ladies from BNZ is coming onto our Sharp Strategies, which is next month. And the other person who's coming is a lawyer from a law firm in Wellington, Moran Law. And she's lovely, wonderful lawyer, Louisa. And they're going to talk about, and the Sharp Strategy, which is a Zoom that we hold on a regular basis, is going to be after the 5th of April. And they're coming on to talk about what now. And hopefully by then, some of these things will have become clearer. There's a lot of information that we haven't got out of government, and I wonder why. And I think it's because government itself isn't clear. The Companies Office itself isn't quite clear about what's going to happen and how are they going to deal with this. But if it's still over 9,000 organisations, it's going to be a bit of a mess, because they're all going to be clamouring, where's our money? What happened to our club rooms? Why doesn't this contract work?
Maybe
You know,
can you just summarize which are the organizations that really have to watch out?
it's only incorporated societies, be they charities or not. It's if your structure is a legal organization, as an incorporated society, this is what's going to happen to you. Now, I just want to say that some people don't know what their legal structure is. Or some people think they're a different legal structure. So we've come across people lately who swear in black and blue that they're a charitable trust and they don't have to do it. If they were a charitable trust, they don't, because trust is not a trust, is not an incorporated society. But then when we went and checked them on the charities register, and you've been calling yourself a trust for many years, you're an incorporated society. And that's why they weren't doing anything, because they didn't realize what their actual legal structure was. And I'm a bit shocked when that happens, because if you're a charity, and this group that was a charity, you have a whole lot of expectations on you from charity services. Once a year, you have to put through what's called a service report. which details all the things your charity does, gives financial information, all that goes on the charity's register. Also, if you have an AGM and you change members and things like that, you have to get hold of charity services and let them know the changes and what the names of your new board members are. So you would think that people who are up to date with charity services would know what their legal structure was,
Mm.
especially when they go to find their name and their name is, you know, Beate Mathis's Incorporated Society. It's pretty clear you're an incorporated society. It's not Beate's Trust, you know? But they don't seem to look at that stuff. And to a certain point, I go, if you're going to run a non-profit organization, you have to take governance duties a little more seriously than just putting your constitution in the bottom drawer and never looking at it again, and not actually understanding that you are more than just a club. You are a legal entity
Mm.
and you have certain requirements under the law. And I know that it's really boring to have to look into that stuff and know that sort of stuff. If really you're just a small group of people doing a little thing, you know, maybe 5 people running a community garden, that's what you're there for. You're not there for all the paperwork and you're not there for all the compliance work,
And
except you
unless you
can't get
garden in a
funding
special
these
place.
days.
Pardon?
The trouble is, if you don't have if you're not a legal entity, it's very difficult to get funding these
That's
days.
right, yes.
And
As
that's
soon
why
as you
so
can.
many people, they're just running a little club. They don't really want to be a legal entity, but they go to their local council and ask $50 funding for something. And the first question they get asked is, are you a legal entity?
Mm.
So they rush away and incorporate so that they can go back and apply for that funding.
Yeah.
That's the thing. We do hear government say quite a lot, there's too many of you out there, too many small charitable groups, too many not-for-profits. I blame government for that. If it wasn't the issue that you had to have a legal entity to get funding from most philanthropic organizations, a lot of people would never form those little groups, but they're forced into it to try and access funding.
So let's hope that many people who will listen to this conversation and will think, thank God I've done it already.
Well, I'd just like to say that it is something that makes people fearful because it seems too complicated, too hard, and you don't really understand the language. And don't even talk to me about legislation. People just legislation, even if you know it, is hard to read. So we are here, Community Networks Aotearoa. We do have members. But if anybody has any major questions about what do we do now, you've got a couple of days left. If you need help, give us a ring. We're in Wellington, 04 472 3364. If we can help you, we will. But
Thank
you
you very
left it a
much.
bit late.
I'm a bit, I'm just thinking what you mentioned earlier. You said somebody was saying he was absolutely sure, he or she was absolutely sure that they were in a charitable trust. So imagine you have an organization where you have so and so many members, and at the AGM, one asks, well, are we an incorporated society or a charitable trust? And they say, we are a charitable trust. We don't have to do anything. And now comes the big awakening.
Yeah, well, now comes the end of your organization, basically. That's what it's going to be. So I do hope and pray that people in the community who are running a lot of these really important little groups, especially because they are the glue of our communities, aren't they? And I do hope that they don't find themselves in this situation.
Hmm.
But after the 5th of April, we will start putting out a bit of information about what to do now. But for the majority of people, there's not a lot that they can do if they miss this deadline.
Tell me, do you have a last question? Do you have any idea how many incorporated societies do we have in total? So 9,000 haven't re-registered, but how many have re-registered? Do you have any number? or an idea of how many?
Well, back in 2018, the census did what's called a satellite report on our sector. And back in those days, they talked about how many not-for-profits. So that doesn't break down into how many are trusts, how many are incorporated societies, how many are all those sort of things. But back in those days, there was over 200,000 not-for-profits in New Zealand. And I'd say, that ranges from huge ones that have masses of money to just the tiny little community groups. That's a lot, but we are a nation where if there's something wrong or there's a gap in our community, what do? We form a committee, we make a group, and we try and fix it.
And we
And then we
apply for
go for
funding.
money. This is how it happens. Then we go out and we say we need some money to run I don't know, a cake stall just to get ingredients and things. And so you go to your local council or you go to local philanthropy and say, could we have $50 to run our bake stall? And they go, are you a legal entity? Next thing you know, you're an incorporated society. That's why there's so many. And that's how it happens. And it's always going to happen. If there's a gap, because we live in New Zealand, and the New Zealand way is if there's something needs to be done, form a committee and do it. And that's where these things grow from. So,
Thank you so
we've got to
much.
be very grateful we're in such an incredibly community-minded country.
Yes. And thank you very much for the work that you're doing in Community Network Aotearoa. And
Thank you.
we'll put the phone number up and the website so that people can get some information. Thank you very much.
Can I sell something before I go?
Absolutely.
28th and 29th of July, we're holding a conference in Wellington. And we're holding it jointly with the New Zealand Council of Christian Social Services. And the two groups together, we've been working very hard. And I can tell you now that we have chosen our MC, and our MC has agreed to do it, and it's going to be Murray Edridge. So Murray works with Whakamaru, which is the Wellington City Mission, and he's an amazing guy. And the whole point of the conference is about connecting together. And we're going to have an amazing program, and we have just starting to get people confirming for it. So if you want to come to it, you just go onto our website and you go to the conference tab, and you'll read a bit about us. And although we haven't got the program up yet, maybe you'd like to put some money aside and see if you can pop into Wellington and come to our conference. I think you'd love it.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much, Ros.
Thank
All
you,
the best.
Beate.
Aotearoa peace is calling. In the bonds of love we meet. For the world a new day dawning and shine.